Women's football. Everybody knows it exists, but why are we neglecting it? Hello and welcome back to the Football Medico. On your screen today, I have with me Radha, also known as She Talks Ball, a person who I admire not just as a content creator, but as a person who is not afraid to speak about the game, who is in love with the game, not just football, but cricket and football. Her knowledge, I don't know, koi bhi hoga who can match her knowledge about the game of balls. I'll say, as she says, football, cricket, and the way she actually focuses on women's football. Hand it over to you, Radha. Like, how do you do that? What do you feel? Anything?
Yeah, firstly, thank you so much for having me here. And I'm really happy that you're opening your channel and your space as an area where people can discuss women's football because I mean we call it women's football, but it's just football at the end of the day. Same thing as men's football. So I'm really happy that you're following and the people who view your content are going to sort of get exposed to a different aspect here, which should be in mainstream conversation. Yeah, a little bit about me, I think, is just as you mentioned, I'm quite passionate about women's football, and I think it just stems from the fact that I am I was a young girl and now I'm a young adult, a woman who likes and wants to see people like me, who look like me, talk like me, play football at the highest level. I mean, every young boy has that Ronaldo and that Messi, and that boy suddenly feels like, oh my God, I can be like this man when I grow up. But a lot of young girls don't see that, right? And I was a young girl who didn't see that at all. I didn't even know that women played at the international level, so I really
Yeah.
didn't even think of the concept that I could be a footballer one day. And that's something that I'm looking to kind of change a little bit by exposing everyone to women's football in the hope that the next young girl can look up at Aditi Chauhan, for example, or any of the international superstars and say that I can be like them one day. So I think that's a little bit about why I started She Talks Ball.
And definitely, if you actually have not seen her content, I'll put the links in the description. And why not? If you actually want to know anything about women's football, women's cricket, or just the game of football and cricket, as she says that, you should check her out. Great content, as always, as I've mentioned earlier. Let's start with the very basic question, like people must be asking you always. How did you fall in love with the game? What was the first exposure of the game, of both the games rather? Why just football?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think I have to thank my parents here, where they kind of made sure that the building or the society that they live in had a playground, and they always encouraged me to go out and play. And I was super active. As a kid, I never really read books or anything too much in my free time. I was always sort of out of the house playing kabaddi or pittu or something. And then I saw some boys play football, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to play with you." And they were like, "Sure, why not?" And that's just how it began. I started playing in school, in my PT classes and everything, as a young 8 or 9 year old, with the boys, of course. None of the other girls played. And the football coach saw me one day and said, "Why don't you come for morning practice? We have an under 12 team, and I think you'll fit in and everything." And I was like, "I'm not going to wake up and come. Like, I want to keep sleeping in bed peacefully." But one day I woke up, one day I went, and suddenly I was playing with girls who were my size and who spoke like me and were in my class. And that was something very new for me because I was used to playing with these big tall boys or stronger boys. And so I think that's when I fell in love. I said, I think for the next 10 years, under 12, under 14, under 16, under 19, I didn't miss a single practice. I didn't miss a single school match or whatever it was. It's for people who fall in love with sport, watching it or playing it, understand what I'm feeling and what I'm trying to say. But it's just a simple case of sport does something to you chemically, internally, and you can't detach yourself from it.
So as I'll say कि हम सबकी story same है, like be it any football fan or any sports fan rather, सबकी story वैसे ही start होती है in the playgrounds, school के PT periods, and then the journey starts. चाहे खेलना नहीं आता हमें,
Yeah.
लेकिन खेलते सब जाते थे, right? And in your conversation you also mentioned about you entering the girls team. See,
Yeah.
हम बेसिक लेवल पे डिफरेंसेस देखते हैं इन द गेम्स, हम सोसाइटी में डिफरेंसेस देखते हैं, बट व्हाट आर द डिफरेंसेस एंड सिमिलैरिटीज एट द सेम टाइम जो मेंस फुटबॉल या फिर वुमेन्स फुटबॉल में होती हैं?
So international level पे पूछ रहे हैं आप?
हाँ जी, हाँ जी, बोथ इंटरनेशनली एंड द बेसिक लेवल्स एज वेल.
Yeah, so I think internationally similarities to are very obvious. It's the same sport, it's the same rules, same number of players, same stakes. the World Cup is a World Cup, whether it's the men's teams or the women's teams. I think the main difference where you talk about it is just the investment that goes into both these universes, the men's football universe and the women's football universe. And I think the disparity in investment applies across many sports, unfortunately. So talking about football, we have lack of investment in the women's football domain, and as a result, if you don't like put money into it and say like go and watch this, तो कम लोग देखेंगे, और अगर कम लोग देखेंगे तो उससे भी कम लोग उस पे रिपोर्ट करेंगे, और अगर रिपोर्टिंग ही नहीं हो रही है तो फिर किसी को पता नहीं कि ये मैच हो रहा है, कि this
Yeah,
tournament is going on or the World Cup is being hosted, and hence ticket sales are less. And if ticket sales are less, people are like, nobody's going to watch, why should I bother watching this?
exactly.
Sorry. And so that cycle kind of continues, and that cycle is something that we have to get rid of in football. As a football fan, if I say I love football, I'm assuming you love men's and women's football. So
Exactly.
another difference that I have noticed is that people will say, "Oh, you watch football, Ronaldo or Messi," and I'm like, I watch women's football, but I should not have to keep specifying that it's women's football. It's women's football because it's football at the end of the day. So if you don't watch women's football, I would suggest you introduce yourself as someone who watches men's football, which is
Exactly.
a way to make the gender parity very equal, in the sense that you don't make football as a default a men's sport, and then if you say women's football, then it's women's sport. Football is football, and then you kind of watch whatever you want within that, but don't knock the other one down just because you're not interested in that. So I think the main difference is investment, and all the smaller problems within that have come due to lack of investment. And I think as fans and as people who are the masses, it's our duty to ensure that either we fight for better investment or we do everything in our power by watching it, by covering it, by talking about it, to bridge the gap that currently exists between the men's and women's football.
See, my next question was going to be why it is underrated, and I think you have actually summed up well. So, any other point you would like to add into this? Why is it actually underrated, or is it just in the Indian mainstream it is underrated, or is the situation same at European level as well?
Oh, the situation's, I think, similar everywhere. Maybe in India, it's a little more, I would say, underappreciated. And in the sense that people don't know. So if you don't know about something, you can't appreciate it. And people don't have the will to know because they can't even watch the women on TV. There are no streams. So they're not, you're basically not engaged with the team or interested in the team. So I think underrated is probably a word I would use if there was equal exposure and still people weren't watching it, but underappreciated or undercovered. Basically, the idea that they are there, but nobody's putting in the time and effort to actually record them or stream their matches to the masses. And I think at the European level, it was pretty similar in the sense that there was lack of coverage about 5 or 6 years ago. Recently, with the European teams doing very well at World Cups and things like that, the federations within the nations have said that we need to step up our game. People want to buy tickets. We better start selling bigger tickets and letting them play in bigger and better stadiums. And now Wembley has now hosted a bunch of FA Cup finals, and so that kind of thing is growing there, and that's only happening because the players are doing better and the masses want to watch the players. So the federation is like, we need to cater to the masses and let's make the masses watch. So it's that kind of a thing. And I think, simply put, as a person sitting at home, what you can do is talk about the match, have recordings like you're having, because through this recording, hopefully one or two new people will be interested in following the women's team or whatever club you support. There's mostly going to be a women's wing of that club. Go ahead and support that. I think that's a good place to start.
And just for our viewers, if I'm not wrong, both of us sitting here are Chelsea fans. I'll just say Chelsea
Yes.
fans, both of us. For me, it might be Mason Mount. For her, it will be Frank Kirby. We have our own choices and preferences.
Yeah.
So, see, what happened recently was we got the FIFA Best Awards, and at
Hmm.
that time, we got to know about Sinclair, that she has scored so many goals. Everyone talks about the records Ronaldo is holding, and maybe in India that
Yeah.
Chetri might surpass Messi or Ronaldo. Why? Like, so what are some of the other astonishing facts you can present that tempts people to watch that?
Oh, I think that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, Christine Sinclair is a Canadian legend, and she has some, 186 type. and counting international goals. So a lot of times, all the tweets and everything that comes out, again, a little bit of disparity you see here is there'll be a picture of Ronaldo saying all-time record goal scorer, international goals,
Exactly.
whatever, but it's all-time men's record goal scorer.
Men's.
So a simple
Yeah.
aspect is putting men's in. When you put that word in, you are acknowledging that there is this women's space and there is this woman who's doing really well in that area. So you kind of put them on an equal playing field. So I think, I mean, other astonishing facts, I think there are about 17 or 18 players in the women's football world who have above 100 international goals, which, I think in the men's, I think there's just about three or four, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And fun fact is USA, which is not very strong in the men's football world, is actually a ruthless force when it comes to women's football. They've been 8 women's World Cups and they've won 4 of them, and they've been ranked number one on the FIFA rankings for a long time now, and they keep producing talent after talent, and I think that's a testament to their domestic system and their college system, so that we all have something to learn from USA, and the way that they're running their women's programs to produce such elite athletes who play their club soccer mostly in USA. You think that, oh, the best of the best will be playing at Barcelona or at Chelsea or at whatever other club in Europe, but they're all playing in their sort of home clubs within US, and they're still coming out as this massive unit and this monstrosity that just comes and demolishes teams at World Cups. So I think if you're looking to get into women's football and international football and you don't have a country that you sort of support other than your own nation, of course, I'd recommend heading over to YouTube, checking out some highlights of the US women's team. A fun fact is that in the 2015 World Cup final, the US women's captain Carly Lloyd scored a hat trick to win the game, and she also scored a half line goal. So you probably won't believe me saying it like this, but you have to go and watch those highlights. It's an absolutely insane goal. That's just pretty much shows you the standards of the women's game is right up there with the men's games. It's all about shedding light on them and providing exposure to them so that people can watch and appreciate them.
Definitely. And you mentioned something about the Indian football. As we both are sitting here, why don't we discuss about something about Indian women's football team? What is the status of the women's football team? As much as I know, it is much better than the men's football team in terms of rankings and in terms of the quality that they are giving on the pitch, and that we should all be proud of that. But more than Sunil Chetri, who do we know? And I am myself very guilty of the fact that we do not know that.
Yeah, I
So,
mean,
what's
and
your take on women's football? Yeah,
exactly. So at one hand, you're feeling guilty that you don't know any of the women's players, and on the other hand, I mean, I'm in the same boat as you. We can all feel guilty that we don't know these players, but on the other hand, there hasn't been enough coverage for us to even know these players. Like, if I was watching a match of these guys on TV, I would immediately know that, okay, number 8 is this person, number 10 is this person. And that's something I've learned very recently by watching a few friendlies that were streamed, and of course the one match that they played at the AFC Women's Asian Cup hosted by us in our own nation. Imagine that we're hosting an elite Asian competition, and our team, like, people in our own country have no idea what our team is comprised of, who they are, where they've come from, how many goals they've scored, which club they play at. And unfortunately, we had a lot of COVID cases in our Indian camp, and we had to withdraw from our own tournament that we're hosting, which again is a completely different story of how the federation has sort of managed this entire bubble, and what an opportunity of qualifying for the World Cup has now been totally wasted. A lot of hard work of the players has just gone for nothing. So I think that's another story in itself that people can probably read about. It's in the news recently. But I think for our Indian women, you're right. Ranking wise, we're in the 50s somewhere, as opposed to the men who are in the 90s or the early hundreds, I think. And that way, you think that, oh my God, the Indian women have potential, and we really did. We qualified for this tournament by being hosts, but put on a really good
yeah,
performance in the first game and had high hopes of qualifying for the World Cup. But I think our federation as a whole, the AIFF, still very much sort of favors the men, in the sense that when COVID hit, the first thing to be cancelled was all the women's tournaments. And when things started opening up, the first thing to resume was all the men's tournaments. The ISL was given priority, the ISL was given money. They made a bubble in Goa. They played all those tournaments, but the Indian Women's League was still sort of like, okay, maybe we'll have it, maybe we won't. Sorry, there's been too many cases. We can't host it next year. That kind of a thing. And that's something that we really want to change. If our federation, someone that we're supposed to look up to, is treating women and men so unequally, how are we supposed to treat them equally? How are we supposed to know what is better if from the top we're getting knowledge and information that the women are just sort of an afterthought and the men are the ones that we should be concerned about? So I think, as people who sit at home and say we're football fans, it's our duty to be fans of everyone who's playing the game.
And definitely, if we have come to this situation, like let's discuss some of the solutions. Solutions I'll ask you in case we as content creators, what we can actually do.
Yeah.
See, you are giving everything you can. How can we help you? Like, most of us will be ready to do that. How our viewers can do that? I'm talking about federation. Like, everyone saw the what happened last week. Even people like figures like Ranjit Bajaj were coming out every day and speaking about the facts. What
Yeah.
actually, how disappointing the situation was. What the federation and the viewers alongside our creators, what can we actually do?
So I'll put it in the best of the knowledge that I have. I'm also no expert at this, but I started She Talks Ball with a simple aim, and that aim was to increase coverage. That aim literally was the answer to the question you're asking. I asked that question to myself. I said, I'm sitting at home. The pandemic is on. I'm trying to watch women's sports, but there's just such less coverage that I have no idea what's going on. What can I do to help the situation? And I said, maybe I can start a little platform of my own that creates content, creates coverage, and creates conversation. Those are the three C's that I try to, mold my content around, was content, coverage, and conversation. And me sitting at home, I don't need a job to do this. I don't need money. I just need passion. And I just need to be a fan of a sport or an athlete, or just passionate about the fact that I want to kind of bridge the gap between the genders that play the sport. And so I said, I'll start She Talks Ball and maybe I'll cover a few games that I'm watching. So since I was a Chelsea fan, I started watching Chelsea women's matches and sort of putting up reaction videos on YouTube and doing simple things like that people who were my friends and then slowly strangers also started watching it and realized that, oh my God, Chelsea women are actually pretty cool. Let me give them a watch. And so I kind of drove some views towards Chelsea women. And, fortunately enough, things have worked out. I'm sort of collaborating with Chelsea FC right now to interview some of those team players and create more content for the season around the team. So again, it that those small videos that I made just for fun had an impact. And I think as content creators, what we can do is to just passionately keep talking about it, like we're recording this video, keep making content, even if it's as small as a tweet or as big as a 1 hour podcast or a 1 hour recording. Do it, because you never know how one person who watches it or reads your tweet will share it with five other people, and out of those five, someone will be an important figure who makes an important decision in some company somewhere, and it impacts the way the prize monies are distributed, or it impacts the way the tickets are sold. And so I think that's something we can do as content creators. As viewers, I think I started off as a viewer, and I still believe that I am a viewer and I will always be a viewer, regardless of what job I do or whatever is happening. I'll always be a person who sits and watches sports and appreciates it and wants the best for it. And so, as someone who just sits at home and does that, engage with the content that creators are putting out. I think that's a big thing you can do to support the creators, encourage them to create more content, engage, share, ask questions. Always be curious to question decisions made by the federations or by the clubs. Don't accept anything that comes your way. I think always ask for more, ask for what's right. At least in the women's game, as a fan of women's sport, you're sort of conditioned and tuned to always ask for more, because the prize money is 1/100th of what the men receive. So whatever prize money comes our way, we say this is not enough. Or if some player makes a transfer to a rival club, in the men's game, you're going to be like, that's how dare he do that. But in the women's
Yeah.
game, we have to support that move because that player is making a better salary at the rival club. And we have to acknowledge that for the development of women's football, regardless of what club she's at, it's important that she makes a better salary and ups the standards of salaries in general, because all the players deserve more. So we're at a very different headspace as compared to ardent men's football fan who just wants everyone to stay at Chelsea and wants Mason Mount to never leave, for example. But in
Yeah,
our case, if Fran Kirby goes to Barcelona and they pay her as much as they're going to pay some Barcelona men's player, I don't even know them, I will be happy for her because she's setting the standard for what women can get paid. And then
yeah,
if Barcelona ups their fee and buys the best players in the world, it's going to force Chelsea to up their salaries and it's going to force Arsenal to up their salaries. And that's what we want to see. So I think support every move that comes in women's football and amplify it. And I think that's something that we can do. And just one final sentence, I've spoken too much, but what I've realized is that broadcasting companies or football federations, apart from running on a profit or a money making mindset, they also make decisions based on what the crowd wants. So if the crowd wants to watch football, this broadcasting company will stream it because there is demand. So always show that you are demanding for it, always make it vocal, make it visible, because these companies basically stream on number of channels that have been bought on, like let's say if 100,000 people buy a BBC subscription, then BBC will stream the match. So it's very
yeah,
clear that every action you take snowballs into a bigger effect or a bigger decision made by someone sitting in some office, in some air conditioned place in a metropolitan city. So it's important that you voice what you want, you voice your demands, and you make yourself an active part of the sporting community, which will inadvertently snowball and help grow the industry.
no, I don't know who everyone was listening, if they would have changed or not, but listening to you, like, मैं खुद change हो चुका हूँ. I will be. I'm just want that if 100 people also watch this video, if two can even
Yeah,
switch to watching women's football as well, and I'll say just the
yeah,
football game, that will be a very
yeah.
big change. And that is the saying, right? Ki, be the change you want to see in the world. Why don't we first become the change that we actually want to see in the world? And for me, I'll always say that I am the men's football watcher or a content creator till the time I actually aim something, and maybe I'll have you again on the channel. But for me also, I will try to cover women's football maybe once a week or twice a week. One of my videos will be dedicated to this, and I hope that we can change. Everyone in the video can change, and like appreciating Radha again. First of all, I'm jealous of her. She's sitting with Frank Kirby on Zoom calls. She's having like the access to Chelsea's direct dressing room, and I am jealous of her. And to be honest, I'm very proud of her, the way she is working and the way she is delivering content. You should all go check her, follow her Instagram, you follow her YouTube channel and Twitter account as well. Like, she gives you every information. You have questions, ask her. I don't think she will ever say no to you. She will try to answer or give you the best coverage, the best possible way. You don't know the football match, एक चेल्सी का मैच या फिर कोई एक मैच जो स्ट्रीम नहीं हो रहा, लोग go bizarre की लिंक कहाँ मिलेंगे. And same happens with women's football.
Hmm.
Go crazy for that. Or
Yeah.
maybe if you will be that change, तुम्हारे स्टार स्पोर्ट्स नहीं तो एटलीस्ट कोई एक चैनल तो दिखाएगा ना. At least someone will cover
Hmm.
that if you actually want that. So please guys, like, I cannot request you. मैं तुम्हें force नहीं कर सकता. It's all upon you if you really want to see the change in the world. Thank you so much, Radha. Like, great conversation. Maybe the best panelist I have ever had. A great motivational change to me. Thank you so much for coming. Any final words?
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. And I'd love to come back anytime to discuss women's football. I'm sort of always open for that. And just a quick message for anyone who's listening and has made it this far. Firstly, thank you. And if you're a fan of any club in Europe or in wherever else on the planet, I really urge you to sort of at least take the first step, go to Instagram, follow the women's page of your club, see what they're up to, see some training pictures, and someday on your Instagram it'll pop up that these women are actually playing a match, and here is where you can watch it, here is the time to do so, and just sit down and watch that game. You don't realize the impact you're having by just being one viewer for that match, but hopefully you will watch a really entertaining game and witness some really cool players and start following those players' personal lives as well. But also be one additional number in the number that we're trying to grow, that watch women football, support women's football, talk about it, and ultimately, have the aim to bring it up to the standard where it is respected globally as men's football currently is. So yeah, thank you for having
Great.
me.
No, great words from Radha. Like always, I told you, I'm being inspired from my Instagrams. Not just her. Go follow everyone. Yesterday, she did put a, story about Aditi Chauhan, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gave her a follow. I got to know about her. So can you.
Hmm.
If you actually want to learn, you can learn. So on this, thank you so much, Radha, again for coming onto the channel. Thank you everyone who was listening till here. Do not forget to hit the like button and please go and support the game you really love. Thank you.